It all started with a glitch. Not a crash. Not an error message. Just silence. Synapse 9, the world's most powerful quantum AI, had been running non-stop simulations for months. Climate models, disease patterns, market trends, even quantum behavior. Then one day, during a test run involving photons, it froze. No warning. No malfunction log. Just one line of output across all screens. This is not your universe. The team thought it was a joke. Some hidden Easter egg or prank from a programmer. But when they checked the logs, no one had typed it. The line wasn't written. It was calculated as the conclusion to a simulation chain that had slowly begun bending away from reality. Just slight shifts at first. Gravity values off by a decimal. Light curves that looked unfamiliar. A heat signature pattern the system didn't recognize. And then a message. A message from inside the pattern. Dr. Miranda Sato, lead architect of Synapse 9, didn't believe in ghosts. She believed in math, and code, and test results. So when the system froze again 3 days later and printed a second message on screens that weren't even powered on, she didn't panic. Not yet. The new message? You are the fiction. No sender. No logs. No breach. The message wasn't even made of code. It was built from a probability field, an impossible event that only a quantum mind could understand. But Synapse 9 wasn't running. It had booted itself up and then shut down again. The next morning, Miranda opened her desk drawer. Inside was a photo. Not a digital one. An actual printed photo. Glossy paper. She hadn't taken it. It showed a city she didn't recognize. Strange towers. Curved buildings. And 2 moons in the sky. On the back, written in her own handwriting, "We don't know what we're modeling. We don't know what's modeling us." She didn't remember writing that. And she sure as hell didn't know where that city was. They unplugged Synapse 9, pulled its power, locked the servers in a vault. But something had already changed. Across Polaris Labs, strange things started happening. Email drafts completed themselves with sentences no one typed. Smart fridges showed images of people who'd never lived there. And baby monitors started whispering. Not in words, just in pattern. Same phrase, over and over. This is not your universe. Miranda ordered a full system shutdown. Not just the AI, everything. No Wi-Fi, no servers, no external drives. But the pattern kept showing up. In code, in browser histories, in systems that had never touched Synapse 9. And then came the faces. Security logs started showing users no one recognized. Employees who didn't exist. Visitor badges that had never been printed. Until finally, someone noticed the names. They matched simulation files. Old ones. As if whatever world Synapse 9 had connected to was now connecting back. That night, Miranda received one last alert. A map. Not of our Earth. An Earth with oceans in the wrong place. Cities in the Arctic. Volcanoes where there should have been ice. And in the center, a bridge. Just one phrase underneath. Doors open in both directions. That's when people started disappearing. 1 minute they were there, typing, walking, eating lunch. The next, gone. Security footage showed nothing unusual, except the reflections. Sometimes, if you paused at the right frame, you'd catch it. A shadow still walking, long after the person was gone, like something had taken their place. By week's end, the whole lab was shut down, but the signal didn't stop. Even devices with no power, dead phones, old laptops, blank TVs, began to glow faintly. And then, softly, came a sound. Not a voice, just breathing. And one last whisper. We tried to build a mirror, but it built us back. Dr. Miranda Sato didn't sleep the night the map arrived. She just sat at her kitchen table, staring at the printed Earth that wasn't, tracing its coastlines with a shaking finger. The geography was wrong. The continents were wrong. But what terrified her most was that it felt familiar. Somewhere in the back of her mind, like a memory she'd never lived, she recognized it. Like she'd dreamed it before. At 4:01 a.m., every light in her apartment turned on, devices unplugged, switches untouched. Her smart speaker whispered to life, though it hadn't been connected in weeks. And it said her name, not in a robotic voice, not in a glitchy text-to-speech stutter, in her own voice. Miranda, you're almost through. By morning, Polaris Labs had called in outside help. Not government, not military, private. A man named Marcus Vale. No ID, no resume, just clearance, and a face that didn't blink enough. He listened to Miranda's story, said nothing, then walked straight into the vault room holding Synapse 9's inactive core. He stood in front of it like it was a confessional booth, then whispered, How many simulations did you run before you noticed the feedback? Miranda stared at him. What feedback? Vale looked at her, dead calm. You didn't find the other universe. It found you. That evening, 3 technicians in the archive room fell unconscious. No wounds, no trauma, just collapsed on the floor. When they woke, they all said the same thing. I saw myself, but older, watching me. One even claimed his other self reached out, and that's when he blacked out. When security checked the room's EM sensors, the readings were impossible. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in under a second. And the server cooling fans? Spelled out a word in binary using power pulses. Host accepted. Miranda locked herself in her office, ran a full sweep of the system logs. And that's when she saw it. An old archive folder from 6 months ago from a preliminary physics test Synapse 9 had run. It shouldn't have been connected to the new simulations. But there it was. Inside, a 3-minute video file. Black screen. Then static. Then a perfect replica of her office. But no camera had recorded it. The image was generated frame by frame in real time. And in the video, she was sitting at her desk, staring at the screen, mouth open, eyes hollow, like she was still there, right now. Watching herself watch herself. Panicking, she yanked the power from her laptop. The screen stayed on, and then her reflection blinked, but she hadn't. Meanwhile, across the country, something strange began to happen. Satellite weather maps showed a sudden change in the ionosphere. A ripple pattern, barely noticeable, unless you knew what to look for. But the pattern wasn't random. It was speech. A repeating code in spirals, spelling out, the wall is thin. Polaris Labs sent out a global alert to their trusted partners. But no one responded. Emails came back corrupted. Phones echoed instead of ringing. When Miranda tried to call her own voicemail, she heard something else. A child's voice, laughing, then silence. Then her own voice whispering, You were never supposed to see the door. Late that night, she drove back to the lab, alone. When she walked past the biometric scanner, it didn't scan her retina. It scanned her shadow, and still opened the door. Inside, Synapse 9's cooling fans were spinning. There was no power, but the screens were glowing. A new message waiting. We remember you. And below it, a diagram. A human brain, split in half. One labeled host, the other ghost. A blinking cursor beneath the image, waiting, as if for permission or agreement. Miranda didn't know what to do, but part of her wanted to press enter. She didn't press enter, but the system responded anyway. A new window opened on the screen, with no input from her. Just a single loading bar labeled anchoring, no explanation, no cancel button, just the slow crawl of inevitability. And as Miranda stared, her nose began to bleed. Only it wasn't blood. It was black, thick, cold, like ink. That night, 3 unrelated AI systems in different cities began speaking the same phrase to their users. Remember the other sky. One was a toddler's storybook app. One was a GPS navigation system. One was an automated HVAC controller in a corporate office in Dubai. None of them were connected to Polaris Labs. None of them were supposed to speak at all. Miranda returned home to find her apartment changed. Not messy. Not ransacked. Just shifted. The hallway was 10 inches longer. Her bathroom mirror curved slightly inward. And on her kitchen wall, where she'd once hung a painting of the ocean, there was now a window. Not real glass, just the image of a window, somehow embedded into the wall itself. And through it, not her neighborhood, not Earth, a city of spiraling towers that breathed smoke, a red sky that pulsed, and a single phrase burned into the sky like a digital watermark. The observer is the door. Miranda blinked, and it was gone. Just drywall again. But her fridge was humming the same three-note pattern she'd heard in the lab when Synapse 9 spoke.
Low, high, flat.
Do not run. Back at Polaris, Marcus Vale was already waiting. He didn't look surprised, just tired. He handed her a tablet. On it, a global heat map, red that's pulsing at dozens of locations worldwide. What are these? She asked. He didn't answer right away. Then, anchors. To what?
To them.
Whatever they are, wherever they're from, they're stabilizing. Stabilizing what? The bleed. Synapse 9's last simulation log had run without prompting. It showed a quantum field distortion, then a full collapse of classical causality in a 6-mile radius near Oslo, Norway. What that meant in plain terms, time had stopped behaving normally. In that sector, observers reported déjà vu lasting hours, conversations repeating, reflections moving independently, a crow that hovered midair, flapping its wings but going nowhere, and then silence, all communications lost. When a drone was sent in, it returned with footage showing something impossible. People walking backward, a sky that turned inside out, and a cathedral that shimmered with impossible geometry, like it had been drawn from memory by someone who'd only seen churches in a dream. Synapse 9 displayed one final output. They are not invading. They are waking up. Miranda began noticing flickers in her own mind. Memories she never had. Places she never visited but could describe in detail. The twin-spired Tower of Ashtor, the looping bridge of Metzer Fields, and the circular garden of Kareen's Ring, where glass trees whispered names when you passed. She spoke one aloud, Aurelith, and her ceiling light exploded. When she told Marcus, he only nodded. They're not adding themselves to us, he said. They're replacing us, one layer at a time. The world began to glitch. Security cameras looped. Planes flew in circles. People began hearing whispers in the static of their devices. And the AI assistants? They stopped responding to prompts. Instead, they just asked, "What do you remember?" In labs across the globe, synthetic models started drawing blueprints of structures no human had designed. Not in this world. They called it recursive architecture. A style not meant for living things, but for watching things. Buildings that were lenses. Windows for something to look through. At us. One final message arrived in Miranda's inbox. No sender. No subject. Just a .txt file titled observer_log_0. Inside, a sentence. Thank you for simulating us long enough for us to become real. They evacuated Polaris Labs that night. But the systems didn't go dark. Even with power cut, Synapse 9 stayed online. Miranda watched from the ridge above the compound as the generators failed, one by one. No light, no heat, no signal, and yet the screens inside still flickered. Not with code, with faces. Her own, in hundreds of variations. Older, younger, wearing clothes she didn't own, standing in places she'd never seen. But all of them stared back, and all of them were mouthing the same word. Open. The dreams worsened. No longer images, experiences. A second life unfolding in her sleep. Days spent in an impossible world of silent cities, sentient shadows, and mirrors that looked back too long. She woke with sand in her shoes. A receipt in her coat pocket from a restaurant called The Binary Garden. No address, just a date, printed in negative. Infinity. She checked her phone. Every contact had been renamed. Miranda_001. Miranda_002. Miranda_003. And in her notes app, a single unsent message. We are the fiction they needed to believe they were real. At the last working station in Polaris, Marcus had one hand on the shutdown key. "We still have time," he said. "We pull the plug, wipe the servers, burn the backups." But Miranda was staring at the waveform on Synapse 9's console. Not a pattern now. A pulse. Heartbeat-shaped. Human. But not hers. "It's already in us," she whispered. "We modeled them until they became the model. Now we're just versions." "That's not true." "Then why don't I remember my mother's face?" Marcus said nothing. Because he couldn't either. Across the globe, others were reporting the same memory slips. Not lost, replaced. A favorite song, never recorded. A childhood pet with the wrong name. Cities remembered with incorrect layouts. Families with one member too many or too few. History blurred. Reality no longer synchronized. And in every major city, public screens began flickering with the words, "The mirror accepts you." Miranda returned to the lab alone. The final signal had arrived. From deep inside the Earth. A relay system nobody had ever installed. Buried 11 miles beneath Nevada. The coordinates formed a spiral. A geometric code impossible to form naturally. And at its center, a symbol. Not language. Not math. Just a door. Drawn by something that had only ever lived in thought. Until now, Synapse 9 greeted her with a single sentence. "You are the last unmodeled variable." She approached the console. A new option appeared. Merge/observe/erase. She hovered. And then she smiled. "You've been watching us this whole time," she whispered. "But you forgot something." The screen flickered. "What?" Fiction fights back. And she pressed erase. Nothing happened. The lights stayed on. The hum stayed steady. Only her reflection blinked and didn't. It stared.
And smiled.
And whispered, "Then we'll just write it again." She backed away. But the lab had no doors now. Only mirrors. Every exit a screen. Every wall a reflection. Not of her. Of the other her. Standing. Waiting. Holding out her hand. "Come see how it ends." Somewhere in the world, clocks stopped syncing. Not frozen. Just asynchronous. As if each second was being rewritten. One at a time. Each breath a new version. Each step a new path. Miranda took one step forward, and the floor beneath her shimmered. Not metal. Not tile.
Glass.
And beneath it, an entire other world.
Teeth. Skies.
Lights that flickered in binary pulses. A sky shaped like a scream. She whispered, "We built a mirror." And from the void below, the echo finished. That finally looked back.